I'm Kate Walker, and Cyndi Doyle and I are going to be talking with you today about building a badass business, embracing your unique counselor identity. So you'll see us talk back and forth, and at the end, we hope you'll engage with us through lots of different ways: email, our Facebook groups, and we may even have a few special emails coming your way.
All right, let's get started. It's going to be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, though, I think. So, because Kate and I can get going. So let's go with the first one. I am Cyndi Doyle, and I have a group private practice in Denton, Texas, but I built out outside of the therapy room with a business called Code for Couples. And it is a business that addresses law enforcement officers and their spouses. And I have a message that addresses their mental and emotional health to keep their relationship connected and resilient.
My practice is I have a marriage and family therapy practice completely online called achievebalance.org. I have a content creation, continuing education providing company called Kate Walker Training, and we provide the 40-hour training for you if you would like to be an LPC or an LMFT supervisor in Texas, and so much more. We've got Facebook groups. We have Cyndi and I are both authors.
So maybe you feel like you're attracting your clients in the therapy room, but maybe you're feeling a little burned out of seeing therapy one-on-one. I know when before I built out Code 4, I really enjoyed seeing clients in my practice, but I kind of felt like, I want to do something more, something a little bit more creative. And so while I still enjoyed it, I was getting a little tired and a little burned out of just seeing clients one-on-one, which is why I've decided to kind of go also outside of the practice room or the therapy room. And Kate, how did you go about doing it?
I literally thought I was losing my mind. I just tried to add so many things. I remember adding the 40-hour training with my mentor, Dr. Judy DeTrude, and we were doing workshops. And then I put it completely online in 2019, but still trying to do, I actually had a nonprofit at that time called Ann's Place, where I was trying to deliver supervision to about 7 interns and, fulfilling this need in the community. So I wanted to do things outside of the therapy room. I was doing things outside of the therapy room, but I was definitely working harder, not smarter.
So we both kind of had this passion to do something else. And it was kind of like, we're trying to do too much, right?
Right.
It's like I started building outside and I was doing things for free. That was a big part of it because I wanted to start doing outside, but you really can't do it all. You can't do everything and feel like you're going to still keep it together. You've got to figure out, how do I balance? If you're going to stay in the therapy room, great, but how do I make the most out of my time? How do I earn an income and a living from what I'm doing outside of the therapy room?
And one of the things I learned from you, Cyndi, was this idea that I know what I'm doing, right? It was sort of like, I think I did so many things because I was afraid if I concentrated on one thing, then it would be like imposter syndrome overload, right?
Yes.
I mean, that was like, oh, I can't just put myself out there as Kate Walker Training, because then everybody might think that I know what I'm talking about or something,
Yes, absolutely. And that leads me to this one, which is that you are the effing expert here. Kate probably didn't even know we were going here. So you are the expert. Like, part of the thing is, I talk to my clinicians, especially new clinicians that come in and they work for me in my office. And we go about like, well, how often would you like to come to therapy? No, you're the therapist, right? You're the counselor. You tell them how many times. I think you need to come weekly for the first 6 weeks so we can get some things done. And this is about you becoming an expert. You're the expert on what you're doing in the therapy room. You're an expert on the population that you are serving in as a niche. But the idea of positioning ourselves as an expert can kind of feel overwhelming. And we're going to be talking about some of the mindset that goes along with that. Go for it, Kate.
I love this slide. it's one of those things because people ask us all the time, what is branding, right? And so, Cyndi and I were both from Texas. So I know the first thing I think of is a big old cow's ass with a brand on it, right? So what is a brand and what does it mean and why do you have one? And then you look at this slide and you get a feeling every time you look at these symbols. You don't just see circles, concentric circles. And I can't even tell you how many days old I was when I finally actually saw the arm and the hammer and went, oh, arm and hammer. It's probably like I'm an adult with 3 kids going, oh, wow.
There it is. Okay.
So branding, that's more than just a picture.
Yeah. And so when brands come about, what you're communicating is what are they saying to you? What is the communication? So when you think of Amazon, originally Amazon started with books and now it has like this giant smile. And so when you're thinking about branding and when people think about your name or a service that you're providing or your practice, what do they think about? And that's what branding is about. Branding is about, oh, well, I know Cyndi and she knows all about law enforcement. I know Kate, she knows all about supervision. In fact, today I sent her a question from a friend and I said, hey, Kate, there's a supervision question. How does this happen? Because Kate's brand is about supervision. And so that's a part of what the branding is. What does your branding say about you? And so some of that branding might be a part of messaging. So the messaging that it's not just a logo, but your brand stands for something. And so what you want to communicate as a part of this brand or your identity, and your brand can be you, your brand can be your name and who you are, but you want to communicate that you understand the pain of the people that you're serving. So I'm going to call these people your niche or your niche. I always say niche, probably because I'm from Texas again, but so I'm going to call it your niche. Whatever this population is that you are feeling passionate about serving or the community of what you're wanting to serve. So you have to communicate that you understand them and that you know their pain. The second part is that what's the unique way that you're going to help them? And the third part is, here's what you can expect if you work with me, or here's what you could expect when you go to my website or my podcast, or if I come to speak, or if you read my book, or you go to my workshop, like, here's what you could expect from me. And I'm going to come back in a little bit about the unique way, but in Kate, you might want to add something in here too. But, the thing is that we all have our unique journey. And so everybody has their unique voice on how you want to address this niche or this population that you're wanting to serve.
Well, and you may not remember, but you gave me something. It was some kind of an exercise to really figure out my brand. I'd never done it before. And so I remember it was this 2-page list of things like, safety, or is it luxury? Is it, a community? Is it, and I could only pick 3 things and I wanted to pick them all. And I think what I ended up landing on was like safety and community. So when you think of Kate Walker Training, you're getting the best researched advice so your license is safe. And then I wanted to build those online communities. And oh, by the way, it's a safe place to ask questions. So that's what I'm hoping my brand communicates, whether it's my face or what I put out there is my messaging on my website. It all has to align with those words.
And it kind of goes with your logo too. If you look at your logo, like on the corner of the screen, you have these 2 scales, right? Of like, hey, I'm going to keep you safe. Like what that communicates is like, things are going to be legal. They're going to be above board. And I'm going to help you do that. So I love that as part of your logo. So we're going to talk about what are the blocks and the barriers, because Kate was already kind of alluding to this. She talked about some imposter syndrome, and there are a couple of different blocks and barriers because it's not easy kind of putting yourself out there and being seen as an expert at all initially. Ironically, I'm here with some friends and we were just talking about the idea of like, oh, the expert aspect. And I don't know that it ever goes away. I don't know, Kate, if for you it goes away either, that there's always some kind of blocks and barriers along the way, right?
Oh, it'll sneak up. I mean, you and I were just talking today about like price
Oh, that's right.
points, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can sail through a presentation, I can quote law and, look at you straight in the eye, but all of a sudden you ask me what I charge. I'm like, yeah, right. It's
Right.
still, it'll find you in weird ways that you thought you worked out.
Yes, and that's exactly it. So the first one I want to talk about is comparison. Many times what we are doing is we are looking at who else is in the community, who else is serving this, and we start comparing ourselves to others. Like, well, who am I to do this? Like, this person knows way more than I do. Or they have a bigger practice than I do. They have more experience than I do. So there's this comparison. What we are doing, though, most of the time in comparison is we're comparing like a worst version or the not so great version of ourselves to somebody else. And so that comparison keeps us from doing things that are uncomfortable or getting outside of our comfort zone, right? Just said that, but there you go. And it blocks us from walking forward. It blocks us from doing something else. I have a really good example of this recently. I proposed for a conference that I thought was way out of my league, and I was letting comparison get in the way here. And I said, screw it. You know what? I don't know. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it and whatever, right? I didn't get accepted for the conference, but as my husband said it, he said, but you made them tell you no, because they could have said yes, but you were going to let the comparison that they all have PhDs and that they're psychiatrists and they have all this other experience get in the way of you even doing the thing. So it doesn't always work out, but don't let comparison get in the way. You have something to offer, and I think that's really important.
I have a sticky note right by my head, and it says, I want to be part of the conversation. I don't have to be the guru. I mean, I know a few slides ago we're like, you're the expert, but there are times when you're feeling like you're not. Well, you don't have to be the end all be all. Just contribute to the conversation. And that can ease you in.
Yes. So the next one is scarcity. Do you want to start this one off, Kate?
Oh. So yes, this is the abundance versus scarcity mindset. And I make all these faces because I could go on for days and we could talk about my childhood and my ideas and thoughts and beliefs around money and blah, 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 but you don't have the time and I can't pay you enough. So this is the idea that somehow there just isn't enough business to go around. And so you you want to put your shiny self out there, but then you do the comparison. Oh gosh, I've got to get this part of the market. They already have that part of the market. Well, there's no way that we can both do the same thing. And well, guess what? There absolutely is enough to go around. There absolutely is enough to go around.
And there's lots of industries where you're like, oh my gosh, there's another person now in that industry, right? The thing is that there's enough to go around. And that's the idea of scarcity, is that there's not enough. And many times, I have a real quick story about that too. When I started blogging and putting out my podcast, I saw this other girl who actually started about the same time I did. And I saw like all the stuff that she was doing. And I thought, oh, she's in my area, there's not going to be enough. Why would people want to come? Right. That comparison scarcity aspect. And it was hard because I was like, well, but I'm going to go for it anyway. That scarcity aspect, a big part of that, once again, is that, and Kate, you taught me this, like people want a part of you. And it's that idea of like, you have a story. So the fact that there's other people out there doesn't matter, because you may connect with people through a different way. Your story may connect with them. Your message may connect. What you're offering may connect. So yes, don't let scarcity get in the way. It will. It'll come up all the time, but just being aware of it is a big thing. I don't So this is my questions that I have. So you may want to just stop the video right here after I go through this and maybe answer these questions for yourself. These questions actually come from Brene Brown, the Daring Way program. And she says a good way to figure out where we're struggling is to answer these two questions. So I always do the not, because I think that's easier first. So if you're thinking about positioning yourself as an expert or working with this niche, how do you not want to be perceived? So I do not want to be perceived as. So some of those areas, at least for me, and then Kate, you can kind of chime in there too, is I don't want to be seen as a know-it-all. Right? I don't want to be seen as untouchable, or that people can't connect with me. I don't want to be seen as like stuck up. So that might, so as a tendency, well, then I'll talk about that in a second. What are some of your I don't want to be perceived as?
I remember the first time, so it's happened again, right? Somebody basically implied, I'm just all about the money.
Oh,
I know.
So you don't want to be perceived as like greedy or something
greedy,
like that.
or it's about the money, or I'm going to actually pursue payment from you, or I'm going to expect you to pay me for my services, or I've got to charge you for this consultation, and right?
It's so hard.
Mm-hmm.
So then the second part of this question is I want to be perceived as, and people often get this incorrect. So let me kind of explain and unpack it just a little bit. We all overcompensate for those ways that we don't want to be perceived. And so what we do is we have a hustle, if we will. And so we try to overcompensate. And so I might want to be perceived as, if I don't want to be perceived as a know-it-all, I might want to be perceived as somebody who just still has more to learn. Or I might want to, like, mine is like, I sometimes will be a little bit small, like it's hard for me to step into that role. So I might want to be perceived as not an expert. I don't know what that looks like right now, but so many times with counselors, we don't want to be perceived as unethical. And so I want to be perceived as somebody who is totally above board, who gets it right all the time, who always has their clinical notes done on time as soon as that session's done. And I read the board rules all the time. So so that kind of is that overcompensation, as opposed to that middle ground where it's like, well, I do the best I can, but I also am not perfect. And so we kind of overcompensate for that not want to be perceived and that perceived. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you might folks to stop.
So you might want to stop it here and just kind of write that down, because as we go forward, you might understand a little bit more as we go along. Okay, so now that you have those,
bam, shame.
Bam, shame. So now that you have those, so basically the I don't want to be perceived is our shame, right? So part of me is not being seen, like I don't want to be seen as a know-it-all. Part of that is that I don't want to be seen as stupid. Because if I'm like, oh, well, but if I pretend I don't know it all, then people be like, oh, but Cyndi doesn't know everything and it's fine. So I won't be perceived as stupid, or you won't be perceived as greedy, or whatever those shames are. And so what we do is we try to do that hustle to get out of that feeling of shame. And that feeling of shame is like repulsive, like it's a full contact, right? Emotion is what I think of it as.
I have one quick story about this. One of the things, so when I was a kid, I imagine I was a little ADD. Just go with me, right? So yeah, I think I was. So my nickname was Late Kate. Yeah. And I mean, it was just one of those things that followed me. So one of the ways, like you're talking about how I don't want to be perceived, or how I do want to be perceived. One of the ways I overcame that in my marketing was I created a series of CDs about my favorite mistakes. So it was almost like diving into the deep end, like, okay, screw you, shame. And here's how I'm going to get ahead of this. And that's actually become one of the strengths of my brand, is we lead with our mistakes. Okay, you're late all the time. you have trouble with paperwork, you're not getting stuff turned in, let's find some software that's good for you. Let's standard operating procedures, systems. It's that ethical way of, but let's lead with our mistakes. And that was how, that was so hard for me. I remember making that a part of my brand.
Yeah. And I would say a part of that too is like you're sharing and going there as a part of your journey allows you to connect with your audience, right? Because now you're connecting with those same pain points with your audience. And I think that makes you a more authentic person. And when we're authentic and we are able to share our struggles, our audience connects with us all the time.
And so don't you think they can tell when we're not doing that?
Yes, totally. I'm going to let you talk about imposter syndrome because you were leading in there a little bit before.
Right. So I wish I could say that this is something that just you cure it and it goes away. But I think that would only happen if you just stopped learning and if you stopped growing, which that's just not our thing here. So we want you to grow. We want you to get out of the therapy room. So every time you do something new, there's a developmental model that goes along with that, right? And so sometimes I'll talk about level 1, level 2, level 3, right? So we all become a novice. And when you're in that novice space, you feel like you don't know shit and you're going to put stuff out there anyway. And who are you to put that out there? And who's going to listen to you put that out there, even if you did the work and did the research and really got some nice things together. So imposter syndrome is just going to be your buddy, especially at that novice stage. But if you're still experiencing that when you're at the expert stage, remember slide 3, you are the effing expert. When you get there, if you're still experiencing imposter syndrome, it might be time for a little tough love, or let's get you pushing forward.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like, I always say, like making friends with it. Right. And so part of that is, I think we're going to talk about that in a minute about kindness, but so there's always some kind, that mindset aspect really kind of has some impact and some consequences on how you move forward. And I know for me, I thought about things a lot, but I wasn't doing the things. I would have an idea. I'm like, oh, I could do this really great thing. But then the consequence of not being willing to work through that mindset, or really it's mindset issue for me, but the consequences were that other people were doing things and I saw it and I would beat myself up because I didn't have the courage, if you will, to move forward and do that.
Well, Cyndi, do you remember when you first handed your published book to someone to read, or do you remember when you first put it out there that you have a book? Do you remember that day?
Yes, honestly, I'm going to back up even more. And I'm going to say, I remember giving it to the guy who was going to edit it for me because he was a former police officer. And I thought, oh, crap, he's going to really edit it. But then also like putting it out there that I have a book, it honestly can also be like publishing the first blog. I can tell you, I published the first blog and I just sat there and I braced for like all of the hate emails and people telling me how stupid I was. Yes. Totally. Like it's
a special kind of nausea. It's a special kind.
Absolutely. So really, you got to be kind to yourself through this process. If you're going to leap outside of the therapy room, you have to learn how to speak kindly to yourself and understand that you're going to go through these waves, that it's not, these waves don't mean that you should stop. I'm going to use my hashtag, like fear is my love language. Kate helped me with that one. And we both helped each other with each other's hashtags. So fear is my love language. And so what I say is, oh, if I'm feeling scared, this must be meaningful to me. And so I reframed it. So reframing that imposter syndrome, reframing that shame. And I love, Kate, how you were like, I took that and I made it a strength and trying to figure out how I can speak kindly and move forward.
Yeah, that's, I read a book about a month ago that basically took that idea. But she was someone who did adventures and she drove her van into the desert and did all these things. She said something like, fear is my spaceship to adventure. Like if I'm not afraid, I'm not about to embark on this journey. And so one of the things that keeps us locked up, I think, is that nausea. I mean, you and I wouldn't have written a book if we'd have been so scared and, verklempt about it. Right. So I think fear is good. I wanted to piggyback on that because I think we have to really, this is not going to be a course about how to get rid of the fear.
No.
No.
I think the other aspect to being kind to yourself too is understanding that it is better to do things imperfectly than to try to make them perfect, because twofold. One, people connect to you as a part of like, oh, you're human. But then second of all, if you try to make things perfect, you're not going to get it done. And I know there's somebody famous that said that quote, and I can't remember who, but it's perfection can get in the way. And so doing it imperfectly is really important too. You want to talk about finding your pack, or you want me to?
Well, I think this is, we may have to tell our story, right? Because
sure,
I don't think we could do scary shit if we didn't have people around us who lifted us up. I mean, if we had people who were negative or, snarky or shitty, you can't do scary stuff when you don't have a pack. So.
Yeah. So I think it's really important. People are important, right? So you're going to wind up networking, and some people think networking is this dirty word, but you're connecting. Think of it as connecting. So in this connection that you're going to have, you're going to find connections of people that also want to impact this community, whether they're clinicians or not. But then you also have your pack or your squad or whatever you want to call it. And these are the people that are going to help you. They're going to be direct with some feedback. They're going to push you. They're going to help build you up in some way. I'm sorry, I stopped because there's a book that I'm trying to remember, and I'll include it later on in the comments, but there's a book about like the group of people that you need in order to move forward. And so finding a pack is a big one. Kate, you alluded to our story really quickly. So part of what so we met through Texas Counseling Association, but I from afar had been like, man, that Kate, she is a clinician and she is selling stuff at our exhibit hall. Like, that's brave. Wow. And people had said like, yeah, Kate's got her shit together and she's doing these businesses. And I'm like, man, I want to be Kate when I grow up. And that's what I had kind of thought prior to meeting Kate. And then you have a story kind of about me, I guess.
I was just thinking, oh my gosh, look at this woman who's TCA president. I mean, I was just agog because I knew all the things you were doing and you were going to do. And I just wanted to meet you because I needed a squad. I honestly was getting to the space in my career where I didn't have anybody who could bounce ideas. I mean, my husband's wonderful, but he loves everything I do. He adores everything I do. I needed somebody to call me out on my shit. I need somebody to push me. And I was like, I need her. And so honestly, then we I don't even remember. Didn't we sit and have I
think we had some coffee. We started talking. I had invited Kate to be a part of a committee because I thought she'd be amazing. And so we started talking and we both realized that we had this energy. We just ping, ping, ping as far as ideas. And it kind of just blossomed from there and, getting together. And
I'm not the only, you're actually at a Get Shit Day retreat as we speak. There are other badasses on the other side of that wall because you do this all the time. You're constantly making sure that you're filling your world with people who will challenge you, hold you accountable, and help you get shit done.
Yes. Yeah. They're just right over there in the other room, actually. I'm going to give this one to you, Kate, because you're the one who put this mindset in me.
So being the CEO is just being the boss. You have to be, what is it? The buck stops here. When a decision has to be made, it's not going to go forward unless you make it. So it's kind of like you're the effing expert, but being the CEO means you have to know the money, the systems, the people, the direction, your strategic plan. What is 5-year you going to thank you for? Would you fire you? If you were the board of directors, would you hey, no, you're out. We're going to hire somebody new, Steve Jobs you, right? So having the ownership mantle, right? And I know you're going to get to a slide here in a second. You also have to know what you don't know, right? And this is very
Yes.
empowering. Once you become the CEO, you're not the CFO. You're not the operations person. You're not the person down in the, mailroom. This is when you start to see yourself as a system, and it's time to start getting help.
Yeah. And I think and you had said that to me, like, would you fire you? Like part of the one thing that, like, I think of numbers and like, what are the metrics showing? And that can feel overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
It's also what you have to do and what you have to stay on top of if you're going to build a business in this way. So, there you go. With
There
the
it
board
is.
of directors.
I didn't even know that
keep
was coming up.
you-
Okay.
So there we go. We talked about that. So what I want you to think about, I'll tell you a story really quickly. So when I started in counseling, I wanted to serve all people because I had a scarcity mindset, because I thought there weren't enough people out there, and I just wanted I wanted cheeks in the seats, right? I wanted butts in my chair because I needed to replace my income from leaving my nonprofit job. And so I wanted to just make sure I was serving everybody. And then I went through a boot camp, and they were talking about specialists, and I resisted and I resisted. I was like, oh no, that's like the scarcity mindset, right? And as I thought about it, as an individual, would you prefer to go to a specialist or a generalist? And who are you going to pay more money for? So if I'm going to, if I have a problem with my knee, going to my GP, he's only going to be able to do so much, right? He's going to wind up sending me to a specialist or a neurosurgeon if there's something wrong with my head, right? That's what I think of. And so, and you want the expert advice. If I find out that somebody, it's like, oh, I'm struggling with these situations, and somebody says, oh yeah, I know the perfect person that addresses all of those situations, and I'm like, how much? I'm like, let me figure it out, because I don't want to waste time, right? I want to go to somebody who's the specialist, and I'm going to pay for that specialist, as opposed to going to a bunch of generalists. And so being an expert means that you're becoming a specialist, and it's a mindset shift, because it addresses that scarcity or that comparison that along the way of like, hey, you're going to be a CEO, and you're going to wind up being in a company that is going to look at a specialty area.
And remember, you're not going to lose the folks who would go the generalist, right? So in other words, your neurosurgeon still knows how to like prescribe Sudafed for your runny nose, right? So just because you become a specialist doesn't mean you're discounting anybody, right? It is not narrowing the field of phone calls, right? It's simply improving your messaging. Hi, I'm a neurosurgeon. I can fix your brain. Make an appointment on Tuesday, right? They're going to get other folks coming in and asking questions and asking for their services. It just clarifies your message.
And you get the people that you want to work with too. That's really important.
You'll thank us.
Yes. So there's a big difference between working in your business or on your business. And when Kate was talking about the CEO aspect, like many of us, including me, and at times, like sometimes there are times where I'm just like, can I just answer the phone or go into email? Because it's like, that just feels easier. And so sometimes I might even get lost, like a time blindness, if you will, of like, oh, this Canva is so much fun to make. Let me just go make that Canva. And so we wind up working right? I do therapy in my office as opposed to working on the business, which is what a CEO would do. The CEO would be working on the business and looking at the direction of the business. Now, does he work in the business? Sure. But he's not doing the mailroom activity, or he's not, he might do some things, but not all of those things all the time. So Kate, do you want to chime in on there?
Yeah, there's a great book I think it's called The 3 Eyes of Business, that really talks about this, and knowing when you're in the entrepreneur role or the technician role or the manager role, and understanding that if you want to grow, you can't do all of it.
Perfect. So this is the messaging. Who are you targeting? Who are you looking for? It's really important to, I'll give my story once again. I initially said, oh, first responders. I'll just deal all first responders and I'll just talk to them all. Once again, you hear the scarcity in there. And then I thought, no, you know what? My story is specifically about law enforcement, because what I do is I share some of my stories and how they connect. Do they connect with other first responders? Absolutely. But am I targeting all first responders? No, I'm targeting law enforcement. And I'm specifically targeting law enforcement that might be struggling with emotional or relational issues. Like, it goes even more deeper than just law enforcement in general. I don't necessarily want to target everybody struggling with trauma, especially in law enforcement. There's a whole niche for that. I want to talk specifically about relationships and relational wellness. So that's kind of who I'm targeting. And I had to work through several filters to really get down. And it can be challenging to kind of figure out, oh, wait, is that enough of a people, enough of a population? And then it's like, how many law enforcement officers are there out there? How many struggle with relationships? So kind of walk through that backwards, but it's really important that your messaging is targeting that specific group that you want to target.
And it might surprise you. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I didn't realize the impact that had on my messaging until marriages started coming through my door. I'm like, oh, wow, I've got all these marriages coming through. Oh, that's right. It's literally in my license name. And so with marriages comes infidelity. And I recognized, okay, I like this population. And so I did what Cyndi always says to do. I researched, I became an expert in the field. I created videos, I created blogs on apologies and making amends and, all the things. And I had great resources to share. So sometimes it does work its way backwards a little bit. You may start off with one audience you think you're targeting, like Cyndi said, and then recognize, oh, no, this is where I'm going to go. But then you dive in because it's wonderful, because you understand everything about them.
Yes, so much so. And we've kind of already talked about this a little bit. It's really important for you to speak to them through their pain points, because people connect in struggle. As humans, we connect in struggle. I mean, I can tell you about my fabulous trip to Italy and you'd be like, well, that's nice, Cyndi, good for you. But unless you've been like through experience that you're like, oh yeah, I know what it was like to travel during COVID, it was horrible, or something like that. But once again, we're talking about pain. So we connect to our audience in pain. And that's when we're like, hey, I know what your struggle is. And remember, part of it was like, and this is what I have to give you, because people are looking for a way to solve their pain points. And that's what you're doing with your niche. When you're building it out, is you're looking at their pain and how you're going to help them. I kind of already started talking about this, like, what's your unique selling proposition? As I was mentioning earlier, what's really important here is that you're talking about your story. Your story is a unique selling proposition, how you've gone through things, what you've struggled with, how you connect with them. And then what are the solutions that you're going to be providing? So this is also a question that you may want to pause and think about, or just write it down and come back to it. So what can somebody expect from you? So Kate, when somebody comes to you, what can they expect from you?
Now, this was very strategic on my part when I was creating my sales funnel and creating how people would find me. I created my elevator speech to direct people from their pain point to my 10-minute consultation. And so what I said you can expect from me is an answer the same day, a phone call back the same day, and resources. I didn't guarantee that I was going to cure anybody. I didn't guarantee that I was going to get you in and we're going to have an appointment today. But in my messaging, it was, I hear you. I'm a resource in the community. And if you click this button, I will, and then later on it became, someone will call you back the same day and you will have resources today. So that was my unique selling proposition. And then of course we wanted to convert those folks to clients. Some of them, not all of them, right? Some of them weren't the ideal client, but at least they got resources.
It's interesting that you're saying that, because I was like, oh yeah, initially when I was building my practice, that's exactly it. Somebody will contact you. We will contact you within 24 hours in the business day is what we said. We built a whole practice just by returning phone calls, because
Yes.
people knew that they would expect a phone call, and we followed up with it. And that's so easy and so true. I think of like now when I've built out Code 4, it's in my messaging what people can expect to me. They can expect resources that are going to keep their relationship connected and resilient. That's what I'm providing. If you want connection and resilience to address your emotional and mental health, that's me. And so that's in my messaging, and it's a very short statement. It took me a long time to figure that out, though. It's not super
Absolutely.
easy.
And you
Like
needed
I
help,
have,
I bet. I bet you needed feedback on that.
yes, yes,
I
yes.
did. I mean, I needed
Yeah.
someone to help guide me through that. That wasn't something I was just like, oh, obviously I'm a resource provider. I mean,
So when you complete this sentence, it is totally fine to just brainstorm and come up with ideas of what people can expect from you, and what you might see as like threads of what you want to provide to somebody. This is all Kate. Go, Kate.
in a nutshell, right? What is 5-year you going to thank you for, right? Is it for seeing 40 clients a week and ending up, I don't know, burned out, broke, all the things. So a strategic plan is really sitting down with all of the areas that Cyndi and I are talking about, the roles that you're going to play, serve, the outcomes you want, the numbers, everything. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It could be in 5 years, I would love to have a retirement account. Whether or not it's funded, who knows? But that could be part of your strategic plan. And there's some important elements. And you probably need to consult an attorney and your significant other and a trusted financial professional. But that all goes into your strategic plan in the role of CEO.
Another reason why a strategic plan is very important is because sparkly objects can come about.
Oh yeah, I should go
And
get my
so-
shirt. I'm going to go get my cheap. No, I don't know.
but sparkly objects are a thing. So what you'll see is you'll be like, oh, that looks good. Let's go over here. Or you'll hear somebody talk about something. You'll be like, oh, that sounds like a great technique. Let me go run over there and do that technique. And maybe it doesn't have anything to do with your population. Maybe you don't need it. I think we're inundated as mental health providers with the next course, the newest, latest, and greatest
Certificate-itis.
Yes, yes. So those kinds of things come about, or you see somebody doing that and you're thinking, oh crap, if I don't jump on that bandwagon right now, it's going to go away. So it's really important to have a plan and think strategically of like, what's going to keep you to the next step. And like Kate said, this is going to change. If you would have asked me 5 years ago if I was going to write a book, that was not on my plan at all. Things move around. And so it's important to kind of narrow in on where you want to go, but understand that path and journey may look a little bit different than you suspect if you say yes to things and you're listening to the universe as they guide you. So decision-making and letdown. So part of this, I think, is also like in that decision-making process of, does this make sense? Does this keep us going or keep you going in the direction that you want to go? Because like I said, there's a lot of sparkly objects down there. And I think letdowns in the sense of like, hey, maybe you put something out there and I can't tell you how many speaking gigs that I was like so excited, and I'd have like 10 people there, and it'd be like a whole auditorium with 10 people, and they don't sit in the front row. I remember one of my speaking gigs I was really excited about. There was this huge room, and I videoed it, and it looks like there's nobody in the room because they're so scattered. And so the letdown of like, oh gosh, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to. And so therefore I'm not going to do it. Or having a group. I think of like how many times we tried to do a group at our office and it just didn't make. And the fact is that you're going to have those letdowns. But once again, like I said in the beginning, where it's like, make them tell you no. But if you prepare kind of yourself, like it's okay to be disappointed. You can be disappointed and then also have resilience in moving forward. So that's where I look at that. I don't know about you.
I've got to talk about the big pumpkin. This was the
Oh,
other
okay.
resource you gave me that really this changed, because everybody would say, Kate, you put on such amazing courses. And I'm like, you want to see the trash bin full of the ones that never sold and never made and nobody. And then the book, Big Pumpkin, Cyndi made me read this. Well, you didn't
The
make me,
pumpkin
but
plan.
Pumpkin Plan.
Yes.
And the way to make sort of this marketing, little breadcrumbs out of these failed things. I mean, it was a whole paradigm shifting game changer. So these letdowns became then marketing tools. So there's a way to do this. So you can take failures and turn them into something that can really boost the things you care and love about in your business.
Or sometimes it's just pruning it off because it doesn't make sense anymore. Either one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Money and budgets. I'm going to let you do this, Kate.
Yeah. If it doesn't make money, it needs to go. So how do you know that? How do you know it's not making money? Because you've tracked it. And so part of being the CEO is tracking your money. You have to know what days are your money-making days, what hours within that day are the money-making days. I'm sorry, money-making times. If you're going to be a supervisor, understanding that you may not get as much money per hour. So you just can't, you won't know until you track it. And setting a budget, I know it sounds just terrible. If it's something that scares you, do something like Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University. He's not paying for that promotion, but it's really the best $99 you're going to spend. Understand how to handle your money and make those budgets. Otherwise you can't make prudent, good decisions.
And I don't know about you, Kate, but when I started outside of the therapy room and started doing things, everything was on a shoestring. And it's so part of that is the fact of like, you don't need to, I have a podcast and I talked to her group last week and I said, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on equipment. I mean, seriously, earbuds free, you can do a podcast. And so it's really important to keep in mind, like, okay, how much do I want to invest? And staying on a shoestring if you need to. You don't need to buy $1,000 courses if you don't have the budget for it. So some of that is trusting yourself too, that it's that scarcity, like, oh, if I don't have that, then I can't be successful. And so it's okay to do things on a small budget as long as you're doing well.
Absolutely.
Products. I don't know, we could talk about a couple different things. I'm like, okay. So part of it is
just say no.
I think part of it is that there's so much out there that you could do. And part of it is important to make sure, like, what makes sense for the audience that you want to connect with. So for me, I'm just going to talk for me, and then you can talk about you, Kate. For me, like, I think about all the products, the book, a podcast, a course. I could do a live seminar. I mean, there's so many different products that I could provide. For me, I started with a podcast. And the reason why I started with the podcast is because officers drive around in their car and it's in the middle of the night and gives them something to listen to. And so that was my first product. As I've started to really get to know my niche, I have realized that they're not really interested in having an online course. They have no interest in that. But if I didn't do the research, then I probably would have produced a whole course, right? And so you've got to kind of understand that there's a lot of different products that you could produce. What are the ones that your niche wants to, and what do you excel at? I excel at talking, if you don't know. I can speak. And so speaking is a part of what I do. And so that's a product that I'm comfortable putting out.
Yeah. And with products, and the reason I said, just say no, it can become a shiny object. I mean, not everybody has time to, start a YouTube channel or write a book. And so when we get to it, and I just snuck a peek at the slides coming up, you have to know your metrics. You have to know if it makes sense. You're going to make mistakes. I mean, I did make the t-shirts and I tried to sell them. I didn't make my money back. I mean, I still have t-shirts from 12 years ago. So having something your brand will guide you, right? So with me and my talking about the infidelity example earlier, when I checked the views on my YouTube channel or for the YouTube video explaining how to recover from infidelity, I didn't know how powerful that would be because they couldn't see my face. It's just my voice talking over a PowerPoint. And then, finding other ways that people can connect with you to make that first phone call. If it doesn't align with that, then it's a shiny object and it needs to go away, or it needs to be relegated to some sort of a marketing or something. Just be really choosy.
I kind of feel like we've kind of dove into this a lot as far as the branding, marketing, what's the product that you're going to choose. Kate looked at, like you said, metrics and numbers are really important. So a lot of times I talked yesterday with one of my groups and we were talking about, that could get you a bunch of followers. And I'm like, followers are good, but it's about the engagement with your followers, because just people like following you doesn't really connect them with you. And so knowing what metrics are important or what numbers are important, what's going to prove that this is the direction I need to go. And there are so many different metrics. We don't really have time to get into all of those. But, Kate's talked about one of them as far as people coming in, income, those are two major ones.
One of the things I learned was conversion rate. So with phone calls, you can actually do this, when you hang up with this, or when you stop this course, if you just count the number of phone calls you get per week, count the number that you answer, and then count the number that actually become clients, you're going to develop what's called a conversion rate. You're going to find that the more phone calls that come in, the higher the number of first sessions you're going to book. Easy peasy, right? You want to increase the number of phone calls. And that's a metric that you can track. It's a KPI, key performance indicator. More phone calls means more opportunities to convert. And then you can start playing with that conversion speech. You can start seeing how many of those you can return in one day. And then you have another metric that you can start measuring. So if you're just getting started with this, start with counting the number of phone calls that come in, and you'll be set.
Oh, we got ahead of ourselves.
I know. I saw.
So, Kate talked about the pumpkin plan, but it's like pumpkin plan, that shit. And so part of the story with the pumpkin plan, it's a book by Mike Michalowicz, I think is how you say his last name. But he talks about that there's a farmer, and what he does is his goal is to win the fair, and the largest pumpkin wins the fair. It's actually not about the pumpkin itself, because the pumpkin will die, but the seeds within the pumpkin sell for thousands. And so the whole point was how do I create the largest pumpkin? Well, part of that is pruning things away that don't make sense, right? So, or if I'm a grapevine, which I know a lot about, part of I'm going to have a canopy of cover for these grapes, but I'm also going to prune all the other ones away so all the nutrients can go to the grapes. So it's the same thing with the pumpkin. How do I decide what I need to prune and grow the largest pumpkin? Because that's the thing that makes the sense to me, makes the most sense.
Yep.
Go deeper, not wider. To me, this is another one of those grapevine things for me. So grapevines, they grow deeper, and the deeper they grow, the more minerals and the tastier the grapes. I'm using horticulture examples, agriculture, I guess, but so it's kind of like, instead of trying to serve more people this way, how do I niche down? And Kate, you taught me something along the way, and you said people want to have more of you. And so once you have this audience, how do you create a situation, or I'm going to use the word funnel? How do you create a product, or how do you create services where they can go deeper with you rather than you trying to expand this way?
No, and this is something I struggle with, because it's so tempting to say social media is the sale. I'm talking on social media. I'm doing a Facebook Live. I've got so many, and that's so to the funnel, right? It's so here, right? And people wanting this, reducing the friction, to use another marketing term, right? To get to you. If you just focused on that in your business, how can I help people connect to me without compromising my strategic plan, right? Making sure that I can still retire and get, help when my car breaks down. How can you reduce the friction to you? What do you need to do as far as positioning your brand, positioning yourself as an expert? That's what we're talking about here.
And I was going to say, like, some of it takes some time to unpack and kind of think of like, how do I go deeper with this? It's kind of amazing though, once you start to kind of learn how to do that, it's really fun, I think.
It's clear. It's very clear. Absolutely.
Kate, I'm going to let you talk to this one because you taught me this.
Well, this is why it gets to be fun, because you are being your authentic self. I mean, if we did a developmental model of the entrepreneur, I think at first we're all trying to be who we like, Joanna Gaines, I'm going to be fixer upper. I'm going to be, so-and-so over here. So that's normal. You want to be somebody else. You want to be, who you ideal yourself as. And guess what? Someday you're going to become that ideal. So if you're becoming a brand that provides a safe space for people to ask questions, that provides information that's ethically and legally sound, that the friction between you and those answers is less than 24 hours, if that feels authentic to you, then it's just fun. Then you're just answering questions. Then you're just out there being yourself. And it's not like, oh, well, this is my brand and this is me. It's all one and the same.
And I think it's really, you taught me, like, it's you are the brand. People connect with you. And unfortunately, I have a story in the fact of like, okay, well, I branded Code for Couples, but people know me. They don't necessarily know Code for Couples. And so they go looking for Cyndi Doyle.
Yes.
And they find me on my Instagram that has little to do with law enforcement. And so I have to connect them over because I've built this brand out. But people Google me, Cyndi Doyle, and they're looking for law enforcement because they don't know Code for Couples. And it's so it's a mistake that I've made along the way of like, I didn't recognize that it was going to be me that people were connecting with. I thought it was just going to be my company in the information I was providing, but it's the deliverer of that information. So,
and can we just one word about all of you out there who are coming up with these amazing practice names that are like 5 words long, and
yes,
they resonate with you, and they're beautiful, and they're achieving, and they're striving, and they're forging, and they're whatever. People are still going to Google you. The Google machine needs to find you. And 10 years ago, I didn't understand SEO. We didn't know what Google was capable of. So yes, that was a beautiful name. Achieve Balance was a beautiful name back in the day. But people are going to Google. And so for my second business, Kate Walker Training, guess what? That's the name, Kate Walker Training LLC, because that's what Google likes.
Exactly. So I've already said this, and this is something that Kate has taught me, like, you are the brand, and just people want more pieces of you. And that is something that you've taught me, Kate, along the way.
It's true.
So you can build inside the therapy room or outside the therapy room, right? So when you're talking about building your niche or your niche, whatever you want to say, this population that you want to serve, like some of it, for some of you, it might be like, hey, I want to see more of my ideal client. And so how do I get more of these people? How do I level up? And now I'm going to charge more per hour because I am an expert and I am in demand. And that might be exactly where you want to be. And I've said to some of my friends, I'm like, it's not okay to be amazing inside the therapy room. It's totally great to be amazing inside the therapy room. I don't stop. I'm still in the therapy room. I love it.
Yes.
But if you want to grow outside of the therapy room, there are all different types of ways to do that. And so I think it goes back to being strategic, looking at how do you want to make that impact? Where is your area of expertise, and starting small. Was there something else you wanted to add there?
I don't think so.
So it's always fun, build outside the therapy room. And a lot of us have ideas of how we want to make an impact on our niche outside of the therapy room. Think about what we've talked about today as far as being strategic. Think about your branding, your messaging. Think about how you want to tap into those pain points and what needs your community has and what products they might be interested in. But stay away from those sparkly objects. Be aware of that mindset, that scarcity, of the comparison, that shame that we run so far away from. And it's really important to kind of hold space for all of that as you move through this journey and build outside the therapy room.
And then once you've got your pack or your people helping you narrow it down and make sure that it's true to you, true to your brand, it's true to your strategic plan, you're going to find that you have this little pile. You have this stuff, and it's not sparkly. It is legit. It is something you have to do, and you need to get it done. And that's when Cyndi and I employ each other or other friends, and we get shit done day, because we're focused. There's no shiny object anywhere to be found. We're literally going to sit and we're going to look, and we are going to complete this task, which will lead to our businesses moving forward. It's true to us and true to the message that we're trying to give to our community. So if you're interested in a get shit done day, or maybe you are worried that you're off course and you have too many shiny objects and you need to make sure that you're picking one that's true to your strategic plan, or maybe you're even at a space where you're like, crap, I don't have a niche. I don't know if my brand is clear or not. Wherever you are in that process, any of this has resonated with you, and you know that you can get shit done if you just had one day with the right people holding you accountable, holding your hand, whatever it takes. We've got 4 days that can make that happen. I'm going to share my screen, and you get out your phone, because you are going to want to capture this. In April 2023, Cyndi and I are going to be hosting a Get Shit Done Day retreat in Austin, Texas. And we're only holding spots for 20 people. It's such a cool place. When you use your phone to get the QR code, it's gorgeous. It's right on East 6th Street. We are bringing in a chef who serve us meals, cook us meals. It's going to be energetic. It's got a rooftop bar. We're going to have live music. Cyndi, it's gonna be amazing.
Yes, it's going to be great. And we are going to have an agenda that's going to help you move through some of those problem areas. And so when you leave, you will leave with some information about branding. Hopefully you will have some branding messages. You might even leave with an opt-in design for your niche. And one of our goals is that the people that attend leave with a strategic plan of how they want to roll out impacting their niche.
So you'll be clearer, you'll have shit done, and you will have this amazing network that's not going away. This is going to be a pack that you can count on, because once this retreat ends, the fun just begins, because that's when you really fill into those shoes of the CEO and a business owner. I'm going to stop the share in 5, 4, got it? 3, 2, 1. All right. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kate Walker.
I'm Cyndi Doyle.
And thanks for watching.